Hello and welcome to the chapter 1 in the geography class 10 resources. Resource: everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable, can be termed as a resource. So, anything which is available in our environment which is technologically accessible is reachable, economically feasible, practically within our reach, where we can spend money and buy that resource, culturally acceptable, the culture of our country, the region where we live should accept it. When these three conditions are fulfilled, we call it as a resource. The forest, land, animals, sea animals, human beings, these all are resources and they can be called as by their existence or origin. Now we see that no one species on the earth is independent. We are all interdependent on one another. And this interdependence amongst all these species or living beings and non living beings is called our physical environment. Human beings interact with the nature, with the technology, and also the institutions, the organization, or the place where all these resources are created. It is the human intellect which combines all of them. The resources can be further classified on the basis of origin, on the basis of ownership, exhaustibility, status, and development. Classification of resources. If we further classify the resources into natural and the human resource, we have renewable, non renewable. Under renewable, we have continuous or flow of resources that is never going to end. Till the earth is there, these resources are available. We have biological resources which have life, the natural vegetation, plant life, and the wildlife. On the other hand, we have the non renewable resources which cannot be renewed. After its usage, they stop to exist. We have the recyclable and non recyclable resources. When we talk about human beings, we have structures and institutions, the shape given to the buildings, to the organizations, to the institution by man with his intellect, with his design, and so on. The quantity and quality, how many goods he produces, how many services he produces, all that is also a resource. Further, we classify resources on the basis of ownership, individual, community owned resources, national, international. These are all the examples of those resources which can be reused, renewable. If we classify the environment into living and non living, we have biotic, bio means life, abiotic, which does not have life. On the basis of origin, the resources can be classified into biotic and abiotic. As we just read, bio means life, and we have plants, animals, human beings, forests which have life, and after a point of time they stop to exist. Abiotic resources are those which are obtained from non living things. For example, the water, the minerals from the earth, the air, etc. If we have a classification of resources, Total types of resources can be classified into on the basis of origin, exhaustibility, status and development, and ownership. This is a clear-cut distinction between the four classifications. Abiotic gives the origin, their existence, from where they come. Exhaustibility, renewable, whether they can be renewed or non-renewable. On the basis of status and development, we have potential, developed, reserved, stock. Ownership, we have individual, community, national, and international. Individual resources are those which belong to any private individual like you and me. The owner of a land, the farmer, he pays the payment in the form of tax to the government. He is the owner. The plantations, the pasture lands, the ponds, etc., which are belonging to individual. The plots, houses, his car, whatever, belongs to the private individual. Community, which resources are accessible or reachable within the vicinity of all the members of the community, the village, the society, the group. For example, common grazing grounds for the animals, they can take the animals to graze, and burial grounds after the person is dead, the cremation grounds, the burial grounds, the village ponds, etc. Public parks, picnic spots, these all belong to all people of the region. The image showing all the types of resources. What are national resources? The word national belonging to the entire nation. The roads of the country. We have different types of roads. National highways, the state roads, district roads. We'll be studying about it in chapter 7. The different types of roads, canals, railways, etc. These all belong to the entire nation. The mineral wealth of the country, water resources, forests, wildlife, etc. The land within the political boundary, the boundary of India, 3.28 million square kilometers, everything belongs to India. Territorial water and its resources within. The term territorial water, when we say, it refers to the oceanic area that comes into India's vicinity or area, that is up to 12 nautical miles, which is equal to 19.2 kilometers from the coast. The new book also says 22 kilometers. The country has legal power, that is, we have the law sanctioning the authority to acquire even private property for public goods. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire the land. Once again, we have the national resources, where the 12 nautical miles, that is from the boundary of India, where the oceanic stretch, Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, stretching up to 12 nautical miles, comes under our national resources. International resources, beyond that, beyond those 12 nautical miles, those oceanic resources that do not come or do not lie within the exclusive economic zone of any nation, they are managed by the international institutions, and each country has equal right to access these resources. Everybody can exploit the resources from there. Yes, once again, individual resources which are owned by private individuals, land, house, agricultural farm, etc. Community resources owned by all the people, which are accessible, reachable to all, village ponds, public parks, burial grounds, libraries, etc. International resource, once again we study, are regulated by certain international institutions. These include the oceanic resources beyond 200 kilometers of the exclusive economic zone, which belong to open ocean, and no individual country can utilize these without the concurrence of international institution. That means they need to take the permission of the international institution to have some kind of exploitation of resources or some testing or utilize those resources. India had to obtain the right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of the Indian Ocean from an area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zone. Classification of resources on the basis of development. We classify further into potential resource, developed resource, stock, and reserves. Potential resources are those they are in existence, but they are not being completely utilized. They have the potential to fulfill the needs of the people, but we are not utilizing them. For example, the wind energy, solar energy in Rajasthan. Developed resources are those that have been surveyed and are ready for utilization. So we know the survey, where is the existence, what is the quantity, and all they have been developed. Stock resources are those that exist but have not been utilized owing to lack of technological expertise. If we buy the technology and we exploit these resources, we can definitely utilize them. For example, making of hydrogen and oxygen from the water. Reserves, these are the resources for whose utilization man has to have the technological know-how or the skills, but has not started using them. Example, the use of river water for generating electricity. He has the technological know-how or the skill, but he is not yet used. He is reserving it for future. The name reserve itself is to safeguard for future. Once again, a repetition. We can have a look at stock, which means materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy the human needs, but human beings do not have the appropriate exact technology to access these or reach these. Reserves are the subset of the stock. So under the stock we have the reserves, we have the technology, but right now we are not using, we are storing it for future. An example of potential resource here, solar, wind energy, which can be utilized with the potential in the states of Gujarat and Rajasthan. Developed resources are those that have been surveyed, they have been determined, capacity is estimated, quality, quantity is also known, and the development of these resources depends on the technology and the level of feasibility. That is, do we have practically possibility to extract these resources for usage? This image shows the renewable and non-renewable resources, which can be renewed, reused, replenished, and reproduced by physical, chemical, or mechanical process. For example, solar energy, wind energy, water resources, forests, wildlife, etc. Renewable resource may further be divided into continuous or flow. This exists forever. For example, the wind and the water. Non renewable resources are formed over a substantially long geological time. It takes a long period. For example, the fossil fuels. It takes millions of years for the coal to form. So, usage is very easy. Once they are getting used up, we cannot use them again. They don't exist. So these can be subdivided into recyclable, example, metals, non recyclable, fossil fuels, which cannot be recycled. For example, coal, when we use, becomes ash. So, how to conserve these resources? The population is increasing, but resources cannot be increased on the same phase. Population is increasing in minutes and seconds, but can we multiply resources in the same way? So we need to develop these resources continuously, using them judiciously, giving them time to replenish, and also conserve them for future. The economic development which does not damage the environment and at the same time takes care of the needs of the future generation is called as sustainable development. Sustain, continue to live. We are continuously using, we are developing, and also storing for future. So in the year 1992 at Rio de Janeiro, the summit, the Earth Summit, was conducted, wherein the nations of the world, United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, has been conducted. It was held at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. First ever International Earth Summit. For the first time, it was decided to conduct the issues of the earth, the global warming, the depletion of resources, climatic change, water table decrease, all such alarming issues, conservation of biodiversity was discussed at length. The first initiative for this sustainable development was taken in the year 1987 at the Brundtland Commission, and there it was decided that the world has to take initiative to conserve the resource. And Mr. Schumacher, he has presented in his book Small is Beautiful, who follows the Gandhian philosophy and believes that excessive usage of resources is not the criteria. Use less judiciously and also conserve for the future. This theme was being carried to all the nations of the world, and in the book Our Common Future, the initiative for conservation of the earth resources was held at the summit or the meeting at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992. This was called as Agenda 21 and it was formulated. The aim of this agenda is achieving global sustainable development, the world sustainable development, where the world is continuously using the resources, it's continuing to develop, use as much as we need, also give time for it to replenish and also conserve for the future. For combating the environmental damage, the damage which is being caused by excessive use of chemicals and other toxic elements, this needs to be checked. The poverty, which is a global challenge, shortage of resources, where different sections of the people do not get 2 square meals per day and who are prone to hunger, disease, and malnutrition. Such problems should be tackled by global cooperation. Each nation of the world is extending its hand to help another nation which is in need. Every country is supposed to formulate its own Agenda 21. The local governments have been entrusted with the responsibility with 21 most prioritized problems and focus on that and make agenda points and implement them to have a sustainable development. What are the problems which are created by indiscriminate use of resource by man? Man is greedy. Man is not satisfied with what is available. So his excessive usage has not left enough of resources for the future. Many resources got depleted. For example, forest. National Forest Policy 1950 says that 33% of the forest cover or the green cover should be kept under the forest cultivation or growth. But it is very sad to know that less than 20.7% is in forest area in India. So that's very less. Resources got accumulated in the hands of few people. Those who are rich and those who have the technology, they are exploiting. The society is divided into two sections, the rich and the poor. The nations who are rich, who have technology, they are exploiting, and the poorer nations have left with no choice. The global warming, the ozone layer depletion, that is a greater challenge in the environment. The degradation of land, environmental degradation in various phases is other very important problem which the people have to face in the future. So how can we plan the resource? It is very, very essential for planning the resource. If we do not plan the resources, we will be left with no choice for future. So first we need to identify the resources, we need to survey, we need to map and measure where it is available, its location. Next, we need to evolve a structure for utilization of these resources. How can we utilize these resources with proper technology, appropriate technology, and also skill? Then we are going to utilize these resources through a developmental plan, and these plan with the national goals, the nation's goal should be at the priority. Resource planning in India is done through a 5 year plan. The 5 year plans were started in the year 1950. The planning commission was set up, and after that we focus on agriculture, industry, self reliance, like that. We have completed 12 plans, and each one focuses on different developmental issues. Yes, the same repetition here. First, we need to identify and list the resource that involves a series of survey, then map, then measure, and utilize proper technology and how to use these resources through a plan. This plan should involve the skill, the technology, and institutional setup, and this plan should match with the nation's plan. It is very, very important for resource planning. If there is no plan, we will not develop. So some of the regions in India are rich in certain resources and poor in some other resources. For example, if we take Rajasthan, is poor in water but very rich in solar and wind energy. So where it is rich, we need to tap those resources and utilize the funds which we are getting there for other resources which are scarce or less. Some regions are self sufficient while other regions are poor in important resources. For example, Madhya Pradesh is rich in many of the resources. But Ladakh is poor in resources, but it is excellent in tourism. So, where tourism is a possibility, where the growth and potential for tourism industry is there, we need to tap those resources, make the funds there, and utilize for getting other resources. Wastage of resources can be avoided by planning. Plan tells us the right path and right way how to utilize the resources. Environmental pollution can be reduced. We need to take steps to safeguard the environment, and those nations which are not following should be penalized. Over exploitation of resources can be avoided. We should always check and have a limit for utilization of resources, and we should conserve for the future. Gandhiji, the father of the nation, his ideas on resource conservation. According to Gandhiji, there is enough for everybody's need and not for anybody's greed. The greedy and the selfish individuals and the exploitative nature of the modern technology are the root cause for the resource depletion. Because of this selfish nation, they are exploiting the resources, and their resources are depleting, they are reducing and not available for future. He was against mass production and wanted to replace it with production for masses. Mass production is not creating so many items for the people, but creating production which is satisfying the needs of all the people, where lot of production is made and the producer or the capitalist makes lot of money. That should not be the criteria, but the demands of all the people should be fulfilled. No one should go hungry to the bed. That was his slogan. So how can we conserve the resource? Planned use of resources in order to meet the present needs and also store a part for the future generation is called as resource conservation. It is necessary because many resources are non renewable and exhaustible. If we conserve them, we can use them for longer period. It will be available for future. Conservation of resources helps us to reduce the wastage. When we conserve, protect it for future, we will be planned. It will help us in economic progress. The country will develop. Resource conservation helps to protect the environment. So, if we take land as one of the important resource, we have land being used for several purposes: forest, net zone area, pastures, housing, roads, barren and wasteland, cultivable wasteland, fallow land. According to the National Forest Policy 1952, it is 52, and the given standard is 33%, but we have very less in our forest area. Land resources, we have this graph pie chart showing here plains, mountains, and plateaus. We know that most of the population lives in plains because more occupational opportunities are there. Land in India is being utilized for all these purposes. For example, forest land is available for cultivation. I mean, land not available for cultivation, that is barren and wasteland. Land which is not practiced for agricultural uses and where buildings, roads, etc. are being constructed. Land which is uncultivated, which is not cultivated, and we have the permanent pastures where grasslands, grazing lands are available. Land under miscellaneous means other than these, like we have uh, some groves or orchards where cultivation is done to some extent. Cultivable wasteland means a culturable wasteland, land left uncultivated, which is not used for agriculture for more than 5 years. 5 agricultural years. When we say agricultural years, all the three crop seasons are included: Kharif, Rabi, Zaid. And next we have fallow lands, current fallow land, where the fallow land is left without cultivation for nearly less than one agricultural year. And other than current fallow, when we say it is left uncultivated for past 1 to 5 agricultural years. So we have fallow means not put for agricultural use. Next we have net sown area, area sown more than once in an agricultural year. It can be used for Kharif, Rabi, Zaid, two crop seasons. Okay. Plus we have also the net sown area is known as the gross cropped area which is sown more than once in an agricultural year. Plus we have net sown area. These two together is called as gross cropped area. I hope it is clear. Thank you so much.